d4. So in this game, we're having something closed. Let's see what exactly. Knight to f3. Okay, in this case, I usually play b6, trying to play Queen's Indian Defense. And e3. Okay, pretty modest way of developing pieces, but absolutely valid. So, bishop b7 controlling e4. Now we can bring the bishop to b4, so it's a kind of hybrid of Nimzo-Indian and Queen's Indian Defense. The bishop pins the knight. Sometimes it just captures that knight, damaging the pawn structure, or simply reducing white's control over light squares. So there are different ideas behind it. c5 is one of the possibilities here. You just undermine d4. You create some pressure to start with, especially when you already have a bishop on b7. You may consider something like taking on f3 and then taking on d4, damaging the pawn structure to some extent. And b takes c3 in this particular case was not forced, in my opinion. So queen takes c3 was a bit better in my opinion, because, well, that's logical when you play queen to c2, right? So it's kind of consistent, at least. Okay, whenever we have such a pawn structure, the natural plan is just to attack c4 gradually. We can start this right now, I believe, like knight to c6 and knight to a5. Don't really see anything against it, so let's do it. Maybe the only thing against it was the fact that I'm breaking the connection between my bishop and e4 square, so now white can actually grab some space, and that was, in my opinion, the best way for white to play. Now let's fix that. Just knight to a5, and e4 is no longer possible. So what's the problem in this game that I see already? White is just choosing quite passive moves, in my opinion. And it's not forced. I mean, passive moves can be, you know, your only moves sometimes. No problems with that. But when you just make passive moves voluntarily, that's actually a big problem. So now, for example, I'm not quite sure if white has a possibility just to keep the pawn c4 on the board. Let's say, what happens if I just attack it like that, then bring the rook to c8 and take on d4 at some point? There may be no way for white to protect it anymore. Probably it's just too straightforward, I guess. Castling, maybe a rook c8 first, or maybe even bishop to e4 was a slightly better option, I don't know. But I mean, even playing like this may cause a serious problem now. Just because of creating some real counterplay based on e4, e5, white decided to play a bunch of passive moves like bishop e2 and h3, which literally accomplish nothing. Alright, bishop e2 is something, but h3 is definitely absolutely nothing. So a waste of time, clear waste of time, in my opinion. So there is a question, can you play against Pikachu Master? Probably yes. Maybe next game. So Fuchsia says that 3 knights Nimzo-Indian Defense, white Queen's Indian Defense transposition. Karpov played that in the second match against Kasparov. Not exactly that, so there was the one with bishop on g5. So it was a much more dangerous version for black. Here it's not dangerous whatsoever. I mean, when the pawn is on e3, it's also playable, but it's just a different line. more likely to transpose to one of the Rubinstein system stuff. The question, where is the c1 bishop going? For now, it's not so important. I mean, the question is what to do with the c4. It's going to drop very soon. Okay, so maybe just as usual, I overestimated my position. This knight b3 looks like a resource, although it looks ugly, but maybe it does work. Hard to believe, but maybe it's a working solution. Oh my god. Didn't even look at that one. That's nice. That's nice. Good one. Like it. There are some sacrifices like bishop c4, cd4. No, just knight takes a5. It will not work whatsoever. All right, I think we should just play aggressively this way. Why? Because white's king is still in the center. And we should just exert some real pressure to push it a bit harder and use it. And it's another pawn that attacks c4, but if white actually grabs there, then we take on e2, forcing the king to bad position, quite vulnerable. And this inclusion of the knight takes a5, I don't think it changes anything in this respect. So now if white castles, for example, I take on d4 and then take on c4. Winning the pawn is probably not that much, but if white takes here, then I grab that bishop, and the position gets really interesting. So now I think knight d5 is something that comes to mind immediately, creating a threat of the fork on c3. Queen to d5 also looks pretty interesting, attacking g2. In general, we should try to open the position as much as possible. Going to take with the knight anyway. So I'm not paying attention to the quality of my pawn structure right now because it's not about static things. It's about dynamics for sure. Dynamics is what matters here right now. So I don't know. e5 looks interesting. Just trying to open the position. I also thought that something like queen g5 would be possible, but e4 is really unclear. Something like f5 deserves attention. I don't know. It's really hard to make a decision here. Almost every move looks interesting, but e5 looks the most natural. And c4 is just too much for such a position. I mean, it's only helping me because the idea is to open the position, right? So white should have done something to keep it closed. And now it's just pretty vulnerable. Knight b3 was good. Was a good try, but probably the position was already quite bad, so it didn't help a lot. But here c4 was definitely a decisive mistake. So I believe that's yeah, maybe taking on e5, maybe taking on c5, something like that would have been much better for white compared to c4, because now, look, d4 drops for sure. I'm not sure that queen has a good square to step back. c4 is under attack. So you literally have created another weakness in your camp, like c4. I would even say a bunch of weaknesses. So everything became quite weak now in the center. And there is a king in the center, so you should have avoided playing like that. For sure. Now cd4 looks pretty good. ed4 looks nice. We can include this move as well to prevent bishop takes a5. I guess it's fine. And then, yeah, then we just take on d4 and then we take on c4, and that's it. I mean, in addition to positional advantage, which is based on that vulnerable king, we're getting some material advantage. Such a transformation is not a rare case, of course. All right. I think that's the game. That's the point. So again, a few words here at the beginning. So this is absolutely a valid thing to do. But I would have avoided developing the knight here. I think something like bishop d3 is more interesting because you avoid this bishop b4, although it's not dangerous. It's just, you know, saying to black, like, okay, you don't have this typical square in b4 because without the knight on c3 it makes a little sense to put the bishop there. And you should probably choose something much more passive like e7. And only after that you can play knight to c3, a nice trick, because, you know, black will hardly ever spend two tempi like in a row to do something like that. But again, as I said, it's not a big deal. So normal development here would be something like bishop d3, I would say, which is literally one of the tabias of Rubinstein's system in Nimzo-Indian. And then castling short. Queen to c2 shouldn't be bad, but it leaves the knight on f3 without protection, which makes the whole center a bit more vulnerable, although in this particular case it's probably not so important. So a3 was a correct move, but after bishop takes c3, I would have captured with a queen, not damaging the pawn structure, because if you have a chance not to damage the pawn structure, it's probably the best way to go. And then after b takes c3 and knight to c6, I made a mistake. So this knight to c6 is not the accurate move because I'm losing the control over e4. So right after that, you could have played e4, I guess. Then pushing your pawns further, grabbing more and more space, and that is exactly what usually compensates this damaged pawn structure on the queen side. And after bishop e2, I think position became really, you know, unpleasant to play for sure, mainly because of that weakness. And, you know, the weakness of this pawn is just a result of this change of the pawn structure. So whenever there is such a change of the pawn structure, you have to be very careful. And you have to search for dynamic things to compensate it, which is exactly this play, which was possible right after knight to c6. And just compare it to h3 move, which is accomplishing nothing. So it's a waste of time. Well, sometimes it's a good move, but later, not in the opening stage. Sometimes moves like that are being played in the opening stage, no questions. In Sicilian, for example, in Neidorf, against Neidorf setup or something. But there they have a concrete goal to control the square to prevent knight g4 or something. Here, knight to g4 was not a threat whatsoever, so was not needed to spend a valuable tempo in the opening for such a move, I guess. Those are, you know, in general, the reasons why your position got quite weird at some point.